thank you for your patience as we transition to this new format. This is the first time we're doing it. It's not the first time Elisa's doing it. So Elisa organizes the Write the Docs remote meetup, and this is what they do every time. So she's
That's right.
Yeah, so if you haven't joined that meetup, you should, because you can join any of their meetup events. And we can put a link to that at the end. Actually, I'll stick it into the slides or this meetup's comment. That way you can click it. And so, yes, she's done a bunch to make it possible for us to use Zoom to do this meetup and help us out with a lot of the logistics. Thank you so much, Elisa, and to our other Bay area organizers. Rebecca has done a ton of work to get this all organized and coordinate with Troy, our speaker, and I really appreciate that. And the rest of the organizers in the Bay Area, Ophelia and Clarence, have been helping out a lot with that too. So we have a few announcements to start out with, and I think I need to switch slides. Yes. So we're doing virtual meetups as long as we're under shelter in place, at least for the next couple of months. We'll see how it goes as things go in the world. And we have one scheduled for April 23rd, so next month. You can find that on the meetup page and sign up for it. We also have another one scheduled that we're planning for May. We don't have a date yet for it, so that'll be coming soon. You can find this information on meetup.com, but also, because you never quite know what's going to be happening with Meetup, we also now have our own website at writethedocs-sfbay.org, and you can always find all the information about our Meetup there, repeated from what's on meetup.com, as well as other information, and that'll be there no matter what happens to Meetup. So make sure you bookmark that and keep it in mind. That finishes our announcements. And so I'd like to introduce our speaker, Troy Stein, who is an expert on the very popular video recording and editing software suite, Camtasia. He's run the Camtasia team for more than a decade and is currently the Senior Director for Customer Education at TechSmith. He'll be presenting on delegated video creation, sharing with us prototypes for future Camtasia releases. So we get to see some secret stuff that won't be part of the recording. Yep. Without further ado, Troy Stein.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. And
also, I will stop sharing.
Oh, that's okay. No worries. And also thanks to Rebecca for her patience in helping me to join with you guys. As I said at the beginning, feel free to keep your mic on if you like. It's just a conversation, and interject and ask questions along the way. There's nothing sacred that's going to be said here. Just at the end, there are going to be some prototypes that's like, oh, probably I'm okay sharing it with you guys, but to the whole world, maybe not. At the beginning, I put something in the icebreaker about what were you doing 20 years ago. 20 years ago was just before September 11th, and I was flying high, running a software company, building software for instructional designers. And then September 11th hit, and I could not outrun the economy. I made some bad choices in terms of how I was running the company, some decisions that I made, and I had to shut it down in February after September 11th. That was a dark day for me, and honestly, for a long time, I didn't even want to learn from that experience. I didn't want to look back. It hurt, and oddly enough, I was meeting with a therapist a few months back, and he was like, "So really, you haven't learned anything from it?" I was like, "Well, I'm sure I have," and then I realized that subconsciously I had learned to do at least one thing very different, which is that in my new role, I hired a guy to be a market researcher. And one of the things that he is my insurance policy, because he forces me to stop and ask for directions, which is something I didn't do. And so we spend an exorbitant, I don't know about exorbitant, we spend a lot of times talking to customers, usually 3 to 4 times a week. Often 3 to 5 visits a month, where we're trying to be with customers, understand what's going on. Let me. So I guess one other thing worth noting is that after September 11th, one of the reasons that I had to shut down my company was not just because I made bad decisions and just because the economy went south, but in part because I was going and building products for instructional designers, and they lost their job. And at first, I didn't understand why. Now I have a theory. I'm probably wrong, but my theory is this. Big backlogs are the enemy. Here's what I find when I watch people make content, especially when they make videos with like screencasting videos, is they make a video and people will say, how did you do that? That's awesome. Wow, that's really cool. Congratulations. Good job. And so they'll make a second one. And then they'll make a third one. And pretty soon they're like, I can do it better than that. And so they make a fourth one, and that's really good. And eventually they're like, I'm getting good at this, which is fine, right? That's awesome. We all want people to get good at using our software. And then they're like, and this one's going to be interactive. And they start building and layering complexity and richness into these things, which is not bad. But a project that would have taken a couple days is now taking a couple weeks, sometimes a couple months. And that was fine, right? When the economy's just humming along, that's super. Go for it. Knock yourself out. But here's the thing. When the economy isn't looking good, I know how our chief financial officer looks at things, which is a return on investment. And a big backlog does not mean job security. And by the way, my marketing department doesn't want me saying this, so screw them. And of course, I just recorded that, but that's okay. A big backlog means I'm not very productive. It makes me think that I'm really important, that I must be making good stuff because everybody's coming to me, which is true, right? But a big backlog means I'm not very efficient. I don't make much stuff. And if I'm Steven Spielberg, that's fine. I only need to make a video every 5 years. But most of us aren't. So let me show a couple of slides. Am I sharing my screen? I'm not yet. Okay, so let's go to share the screen, share computer. I think we're doing it. And there we go. Okay. So I began to get a sniff of this when I was visiting customers over in Germany. I speak the language. I love the people. My grandfather was from Germany. And I was at a conference once, and I met this guy, Stefan Heschlinger from Audi. And this is Stefan. And I began to get an understanding of how instructional designers fit into an organization. At Audi, there were 9 instructional designers for 80,000 employees. And over time, I've come to understand that that's about par for the course. Sometimes it's 1 to 1,000. Sometimes it's 1 to 100. Sometimes 1 to 10,000. It is rarely less than 1 to 100. And frankly, I think documentation people aren't better represented than that. They also had 400 servers with individual services, and then, I don't know, 1,000 applications. And they're looking at 9 people, and each one was going to have to learn a whole lot of services, 100 applications. It just wasn't going to happen. And on top of that, Stefan, he said his boss, instead of buying new clothes, he bought new companies. And so Audi bought Ducati and Lamborghini. So now he's got to figure out all of those systems too. And so what he did was he came up with the idea that I am not going to make content for all of Audi. I can't. There's just no way. I don't have the time even to learn these services, nor do I have the technical capability to learn them all. So you come to me, you get either Adobe Captivate or Camtasia, one of the two. Choose whatever you want. You're going to do it yourself. And I laughed when I heard that. And I was like, a little bit cavalier, but sure, whatever works for you. And that was the first time that I'd heard anybody do this. It took a couple of years, actually, and visiting with lots of people. This is Chris Gialoretto. He's a kid from Chicago, and he plays baseball in Germany, of all places. But what he does is he changed the way the documentation team at SAP worked. They were all making documentation. They did analysis and saw that a very significant percentage of the docs weren't actually being read. And like, well, that's not so good. And so they tried experiments with video, and they saw videos were being watched. They're like, okay, maybe we got to try something. So he began to train people on Camtasia, first a few at a time, and then hundreds at a time, and it's worked out pretty well. But what he has to do is he has to train people, as Casey can attest to. If you're going to teach somebody how to make a video, it's more than just click here and click here, right? There's a little bit of a method to the madness. And so he has to train people on the software. And he kept asking for things in Camtasia to make it simpler for him to train. And we came up with a concept. And the concept that we use now is deputization, a deputy. My great-grandfather was a sheriff. And my mom would tell the story. Elisa, you're from Utah, right? My great-grandfather was the sheriff of Logan County. And he would get home at the end of the day, and he would take his pearl handle revolvers. He'd keep them in his holster, and he'd wrap them up and he'd hang them on a hook. And my mom swears he had a sixth sense that he would leave them on the hook. And then from the girls would be like, "Oh, pearl handle revolver, sounds really cool." And they would go over and they would like reach out to touch. And they would hear those, "Girls, don't you get near my guns." And he just knew it, right? He knew that they were getting close. Well, the way that Chris and all these other guys that are sheriffs in their individual organizations is they have a sense of what somebody can do well and what they shouldn't be doing with a Camtasia, with a video. And so they're trying to create some structure. They're trying to pass along the right branding guidelines. And so honestly, for the last 2-3 years, that's kind of what we've been working on in Camtasia. Is we've been trying to make it so that they can make some better videos, delegate it to other people without them shooting themselves in the foot. So let me show you what that actually looks like. This is the first major presentation of Camtasia 2020.
Is this where you want me to stop recording?
No, not
okay,
yet.
Just checking. All right, I'll
You're
keep
so
recording.
good. Thanks, Elisa. I appreciate it. We'll come back. We'll come back to the slides. So I'm kind of breaking this up into a couple of pieces where I'm going to break it up into a little bit of what's going on in 2020. And by the way, is anyone like completely unfamiliar with Camtasia? And if that's true, that's fine. Just sort of raise your hand and go, "Hey, slow down, youngster." No, okay. A little bit. Okay, cool. Jessica is the only honest person here. No, I'm just kidding. So Jessica, Camtasia records videos. For the people who think that it takes a long time to document a long process, and you take a bunch of screenshots and you write a bunch of words, sometimes it's just a little bit easier to just record and to make a video. And not sometimes, well, yeah, sometimes it is. Sometimes it can be significantly easier. So let me open up Camtasia over here, and I'll open up is anybody, since Jessica's not familiar with Camtasia, and that's totally fine. I will not throw you under the bus more than one more time. Are you familiar with something called Snagit? All right, Jessica
Slightly.
just hurt my feelings a lot. No, I'm just kidding. So Snagit is image capture. So screenshots extraordinaire. So here's a little video. I'll just play it back for a second, and we'll watch 10, 15 seconds of it.
Adding capture info to your image is easy to do in Snagit. While your image is on the canvas, select the Effects menu, and then choose Capture Info.
Got the idea? Okay, so what we're showing in here is Snagit. What this application here is Camtasia. So it's like showing people how to do something, and we're zooming in on the timeline, right? And we're able to highlight certain things, right? You can, you have a timeline that has the video and the audio, and it's got these little, what we call callouts that animate something on the screen there, right? So that's kind of Camtasia in a nutshell, and what it does. And it can be as simple as, look, I'm just going to make a recording. I'm not going to gussy it up at all, but instead of making a 25-page document to answer this key customer's question, I'm just going to make a 3-minute or 4-minute recording, and I'll be done with it. It is a viable option for many people, and at least for some of our larger customers, they found video as a nice complement and sometimes a replacement for video or for documentation. Okay. All right. So we have a timeline down here. You got some tools over here that allow you to do things. You got what's a preview window here in the middle that allows you to see things. And if you need to, you've got, like some properties over here that allow you to like change the audio volume and stuff like that. But like, that's it in a nutshell. We talked about sheriffs. We talked about lead users, that the people who know a thing about video, who are trying to teach the rest of their organization about video, like at Audi, to say, look, here, do it yourself. And one of the ways they do it is they can record their screen. So they click record, and then it opens up the application, and you can choose to have your camera on. It's going to record a part of your screen. It's going to record your audio. It might even record the audio that's coming off of the computer if necessary. People do that to record presentations. People do it to record software demos, tutorials, all that kind of stuff. Okay. Questions at a high level about Camtasia? Clear as mud. Awesome.
That's good. Thanks.
All right. Good deal. All right. So let me pull up a project over here, and I'll show you a little bit of what's new and coming in Camtasia 2020. I'm going to try to minimize. There we go. I just minimized you all, even though you can't tell. Okay. So what I have over here is I'm going to say that I work for Warner Brothers, and I've got a little intro that I want to put at the beginning of my video. And maybe I'm making a presentation that normally I would give to my investors, and we'd bring them all together, but now I can't, right? So I'm just going to make a video. So I've got an intro sequence here. And by the way, I've got a little outro sequence over here. And the outro was made with our new brand, a new logo, and the intro was made with the old brand and the old logo. Well, one of the things that is new in Camtasia is this thing called theming that allows us to go in and say, oh, we've got some new logos. Cool. We'll choose the new logos, and all of a sudden the intro sequence changed right away. If I want to go back to the old ones, I can go back to the old ones. If I work for Salesforce, I can have things. Whoops, yeah, there we go. And I've now got my my Salesforce graphics. Of course, it didn't work out quite so nicely as it did for Warner Brothers, but you get the idea. So as somebody who's trying to create some consistency in the way that the videos are rolled out across my organization, I can create that intro sequence, and all somebody has to do in here is just go in and say, summer releases coming soon. Actually, let's let's just do releases coming soon. There we go. And movie debut changes, that's all good. And then I can put a placeholder on the timeline. And if I really want to, I can even go in and put some instructions that go along with that placeholder, like drag your recording here. And for more help on using Camtasia, go to warnerbrothers.com/Camtasia help, whatever, right?
So Troy,
Yeah.
so essentially you're talking about setting up templates and developing assets that you would then, when you're working with someone and they are maybe the expert on the new feature, you would just kind of give them this package and say, now just do your screen capture and stick it in here.
Just like that. Exactly. Case, you intuited it 110%.
Well,
Yes.
we're trying to do this at my company. We're trying to find more ways to source SMEs. So,
Okay.
wow, a SME tool.
A SME tool. That is indeed the whole idea, right? At
How
Audi,
easy
that
is
was
it?
the idea. If I make my database, if Johan makes a database at Audi, let Johan teach other people how to make it. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be instructionally sound. And so what if the guy isn't perfect as an instructor? It's going to be faster, a whole lot faster than me learning about databases. Then so let's just let him do it. So we create some structure here. We got a placeholder.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Quick question. So the thing that Johan does, when he is done with it, he could also send it back to somebody for a polish. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Editing is, so this version of Camtasia looks a lot more like Adobe Premiere. It looks more like a film editing suite to me.
It does
That
have some of
version I
those
use.
elements. I mean, it can be you can simplify it a little bit, right? Like I can remove some of the options and it can be simple. I can even, if I want to, I can give users a hand and say, this is your video track. And this is going to be your audio track. And so I can kind of hold their hand a little bit through that process. The other thing I can do to hold their hand is I can turn on what I'll call magnetic track. And what that does is it gets rid of gaps in the timeline so that people don't have blank spaces on the timeline. Let me just show you what that looks like. Let's say that I've now built this template. It's got an intro. It's got a little placeholder in here. And it's got an outro at the end with a confidentiality statement or whatever the heck you want to put at the end, right? So I'm going to go and grab my recording, which happened to be a PowerPoint recording. Okay. Like Camtasia records whatever on your screen. So it recorded PowerPoint. I'm going to drag that down. It says drag your recording here. So, okay. When I drag it on top of something, it's green for go, for lack of a better idea. And I'm going to replace. And it just made this video a little bit longer. And now I've got myself talking through my slides and the summer tour that's going along here, right? And then we got our outro, boom, and there we go.
Okay, that replacement thing is really cool.
Oh, cool. Why do you like it?
Just the fact that you can replace something of a different size into something that was there already.
Right.
That's very neat because I've done this before, and
okay.
And I've had to actually move things around and whatnot, and it's not so fun.
It can get you can get lost, right? Or it takes more time. What's nice about the placeholder, I'll undo the placeholder, is a couple things. One is I can also set it up so that, let's say I would like to have, let's just put a simple transition onto this element here, right? So I've got already a fade on it. If I want to, let's say that I want to have a cursor highlight on my video, I can put that also on the placeholder. So now anything that I put on that timeline is going to automatically have the cursor effect. It's going to have the transition. But as Casey already pointed out, she sort of stole my thunder. Thanks a lot. No, just kidding. I'm going to save that as a template. And I'm going to call this one WB Investor Relations. I don't know.
So this is all only from 2020 onwards, or?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great.
This will be coming out in the end of April. So now I've got a template, right? And I'm just going to close up. I'm not even going to bother with that project there. And I'll do File, New Project from Template. And let's hope this thing worked. There we go. WB Investor Relations. So I got this new template. Okay, starts out here, right? Here we go, good. And once again, I can just drag my recording on. If I normally it's ripple replace, but yeah, there's a whole bunch of options I'm not going to get into. Suffice it to say, we got our project on the timeline here. We're good to go. And let's take Troy down a notch and scale him down. And already you can see that I've got my cursor highlighted over there from because we put that on before. And I didn't even actually move my cursor in here, but that's all right. We can change that later if we need to. So this is the nature of this release is the ability for a new user to go in, and all they do is simply change some text to change the title if they need to. They drop the recording in, put it into the placeholder, and let it rip. And they can send it off for someone else to review it. As someone who creates a template, I can save that template. I can also export the template. I can even do something called exporting a package. You saw, for example, so let's just go on here and we'll say, all right, we're going to export the, oh, perfect. It crashed. Yoo-hoo. All right. So crashes happen. I'm in the world of software, but let me just go ahead and send that off. And so when you go to export a package, let me open up Camtasia one more time here. There we go. When you export a package, this is pretty awesome, by the way. Camtasia saves in the background. And so the most you'll lose if something does crash is 1 minute of work, which I think is pretty great. So a package allows you to share the template. It shares your colors, your logos, your fonts, your libraries, packages it all up, and allows you to put it into one small file for everybody. All right, questions about Camtasia and the templates?
How easy is it to set up that theme setup where you were able to switch the branding so quickly?
Yeah.
That's a new feature too, I'm guessing, because I haven't seen that before.
Yeah, so we do things kind of iteratively. So we had themes before, but it was only colors and fonts. And now we added logos, and then we added the ability to export it and to share it. Basically, if I have, let's actually pull up. Let me make this a little bit easier here. Let me bring in my library. Sorry, I'm trying to move some of the elements of Zoom around. Yeah, all right. So let's just say that I've got that on my screen, and that's the logo, and I'm going to build a theme around that. When I go into Camtasia, I can choose to manage my themes, and I'll create a new theme, and we're going to call this one Old School. And we'll put the logo in there. We'll browse for it. And forgive me while I go through all my folders here. Marketing 2020. There we go. And I bet I got a Warner Brothers. I do have a Warner Brothers. And I keep having stuff jump up. Okay, cool. So there's the old logo, but totally don't want those colors. That would be completely passe. So we go to colors over here, and for the foreground, let's just choose like that color there. For the background, we're going to choose like a dark color over there. Obviously, if I've got if I have branding guidelines, it's much easier than me just kind of picking and choosing colors. accent 1, and we'll choose a second accent color over here with, we'll just choose like that one right there, right? And then I can go in and I can put in my fonts in there as well. I can put a couple of them as necessary. And voila, we've got it so that when, let me get that thing off of here, that you can then go in and build up intros that leverage these themes along the way, right? And let's just see how old school. Yeah, that one didn't change as, one changed a little bit, but not as much. Okay. So it takes some time to create the initial one, but then building the actual elements and the groups that are inside of there, the animations, all of that takes a little bit more time. But to me, it's building up it's establishing that for other people. So I take time to do it once so that everybody can move beautifully and fast.
And you can easily swap out that logo. I mean, that was one of the things you showed us, is that once you've got an asset, you know, like you say, a header or tail slate element here, you can swap things in and out. I mean,
that's the idea.
Because theming can be very challenging. You can have, you know, a very finite theme that you have to copy or clone, and then you have to edit, and then so this is much more flexible.
Yeah. So
he's not paying me, people.
Thank you, Casey. That's very kind of you.
We have another question in the chat. The question is, the theme is the template. Is that correct?
Great question. No. So the theme is basically your colors, your fonts, your logos. A template is more the structure of what's on the timeline. So if I go and I create a new project from a template, the template is, let's go back to the Warner Brothers Investor Relations, and I'll create a new one there. You'll see that it has, it doesn't have to have a placeholder, but there we go. Come on. There we are. So it has the structure. It puts elements on the timeline for you. You can share a template without a theme, but one of the ways that you share everything together is by, and this is what made it crash in the previously, so we're still in beta. But you create a package, and that shares the template and the theme. And so you both have the structure and the colors and the fonts and the logos all baked into one. Cool. There's much more that we can go through on this one, but let me stop and ask for directions. And I'm going to jump into a couple of slides, and I'll ask if we can stop the recording at this point. Is that okay? All right.